Hello, everybody, and welcome to our episode review for Star Wars Visions, episode number 8, Lop and Ocho, or Lope. I think they say Lope in the show. Anyway, this episode was made by Geno Studio, and it's one of the more disappointing ones. Not gonna lie, it's visually it looks great. It's one of my favorite art styles. I think they do a really good job with some of the grain that's in it. They do a real cool combination of kind of industrialized empire with feudal Japan look with I got Final Fantasy VII vibes. Obviously, this is an environmentalist story, so that is very much so an environmentalist story. But this is kind of about industrialization ruining planets, and but it also has imperial stuff versus people who want to be isolationists and not part of the empire. And but at the core of the story, it is a family story. There is father daughter relationships. There's sister relationships. There's adopted family member versus biological family member drama. Uh, but overall, it is at its core something we've seen very many times before. It's a person, or it's two people who used to be close start to move further apart. And whether you want to mention something with more like intimate lover type stuff like Lost Stars, where there's a real relationship there instead of brother and sister, or you want to say Kylo Ren and Han and Leia, or Anakin and Luke and Leia, there's a lot of familial stuff in Star Wars where families are pulled apart by choosing opposite sides in a civil war. And so this is kind of plays it safe into that ballpark. I enjoyed the beginning because it had a nice setup for something that could be interesting. Going into imperial industrialization is not something we've ever really seen in Star Wars, and I was getting vibes from this. I don't know what he really is. He's kind of like a faction leader. He's in one of the prominent houses on this planet, and he has basically a gang or something, some type of group of people who follow him and are loyal to him. But he's obviously a good guy, and he's the father figure for both Lope and Ocho. And Lope is found by Ocho and her father very quickly. She's kind of incorporated into the family, and then we move on. This felt like a story that needed to be longer, needed to be a little bit more fleshed out, and given more time to these characters, things kind of move really quickly. They start with an environmentalist stuff about, yeah, we got to get the Empire off the planet because they're destroying the planet and all our natural resources and all this stuff, which is why I brought the Final Fantasy VII comparison, because that's very much so what that story's about. But then it kind of pulls back and decides to go sister versus sister route of one being a into the Empire and one standing up for what her family believes. And even though she's kind of the adopted one, kind of like a Rey, she's adopted into this family that believes in the good. She's fighting the biological evil, which is kind of like Rey and Ben and Kylo. So, but ultimately, I think my biggest disappointment with this episode is the fact that it doesn't really end. We have a resolution, but it doesn't. There's still so much more. Like nothing that main conflict, which they made so big in the second half of this episode, isn't resolved. It's they Lop and Ocho have a fight, and then Ocho leaves, and that's it. Like nobody, Ocho doesn't really say, "Oh, you were right. I'm coming back," or "Screw you. I'm going to stay on the dark side, and we'll meet again." It's kind of just one of those things. She just leaves, and it doesn't really
Yeah,
resolve. And so, I
yeah.
think that's where I was most disappointed. Was even though it's familiar, we've had a lot of familiar episodes in this show that we've talked about, but you can be familiar as long as you give us the full story. And I felt like this is just a piece of a story. So if we get a season 2 and there's a follow up to this, I definitely want to see a follow up. So I think they have an interesting groundwork, but it's not completely fleshed out nor resolved in this episode.
I have to agree with all those points. I know anime has a tendency of like kind of creating these characters that are like half beast, half animal. Sometimes it does lead into more of the furry fandom that's out there. So that was already my worry that like, okay, you made a bunny girl. That's already a slippery slope for a lot of people. Um, but like, there's nothing that different than if she would have been a human, right? There was nothing interesting about her being this, like being different. She's treated exactly as it is. like another human by her adopted sister Ocho, and then suddenly she's not because her sister somehow has gone through this strange evolutionary journey that has made her into this imperial sympathizer, and even though they've had a pretty wealthy and well-off lifestyle growing up together. Um, I mean, the motivation doesn't seem clear for me for Ocho, and there's like so much development that I feel like this story would have worked more serialized than just a short film. Like, I need to see why Lope and Ocho like how like they don't seem like on bad terms, but you can already tell the moment you see them 7 years later after the time skip. It's like, well, things aren't the same. I mean, the father's the only one who hasn't really changed. She's like a full-grown woman now and doing all these decision-making things, and after being basically early teenage years. Yeah, I mean, I liked the look of it and everything. This was like one of those episodes where I felt like a lightsaber was useless. I don't know if a lightsaber would have made sense. Like it was like, oh, it's a family tradition passed down. And I guess there is like a little bit of heft of saying like family is not just blood, it's who we choose to be. I guess that's kind of the message, like who we choose to be in the family. And that's great for Lope, but I didn't see how that made any sense for her now that Ocho is gone. Is she still a part of the family? Is there still a chance to do something more? I don't know. There is not really, and this is one of the longer episodes, which I think is frustrating to me because like yeah, you explore a lot of this world, but it's like either in like big open spaces or imperial spaces, and never like in those city spaces that they have at the very introduction of Lope's character that I thought was far more interesting, where you could get like a little cowboy bebop sort of action going on. Like, how does the world interact with her character? And Lope is also just straight up just a slave to the empire, and then she's not. And then her sister is like, well, we have to work with the slave, and like with the slavers who are the Imperials, which I was like, well, think about how your sister feels, and there's like no indication that she does, which is like really strange to me. I didn't see the character motivations at all there. I don't know, just I don't like seeing sights fighting up against lightsabers. It just didn't feel right to me, and it didn't feel like it was like something special about the sight that could do it. Um, yeah, I don't really have much else to add there. This one disappointed me, which I think is what drops it more than episodes that I was like, okay, like that happened. Like this was just like you have a lot of pieces that you could do a lot more with, and then you just don't. So yeah, that's really how I feel about it.
Yeah, I didn't even really think about that beginning because it's so abrupt on how they just kind of like switch for her Ocho being like, "Oh yeah, we got to welcome Lope into our family. She's so, she's in trouble. We got to help her." And then she's like, "Screw everybody. I'm an Imperial now." And
Yeah,
yeah, that's actually something that I didn't even really think about, and it makes it a whole lot weaker
yeah.
than I originally felt about it. It's yeah, it's it's an okay start for something more if we get more. But if this is it, like this is all that we have for this story, it feels both very rushed and very familiar, with all of its unique branding and imagery, not really bringing something new to the table story wise. It doesn't do something like the duel where it makes it feudal Japan and it feels like a feudal Japanese duel in Star Wars. It doesn't like it brings this industrialization and this environmentalist story and this bunny and all this stuff, but it's just the same. As you said, she felt like a human. Uh, so yeah, it is a disappointing story. There was one use of Dank Farrik in here, which
It's always a
is
plus. Always a
interesting.
plus.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the new Carabast. Um, in
yeah.
Star Wars. Everybody's going to say it whenever they're upset. But yeah, this one, it's more of a disappointing episode to put towards the end of the show, especially. I think if we had gotten this maybe episode 2 or 3, I think we would have been a little less disappointed. Still, the story, the story at its core is weak no matter what. But if we hadn't seen all these other amazing episodes before we watched this one, I think we would have probably said, okay, that was okay, but it was good. Where now it's definitely one of the worst episodes of the show. So let us know what you thought down below. As always, like the video, comment below, let us know, and then subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. As we've said in past videos, we're covering all of Star Wars Visions, so we'll have episode 9 out for you guys soon. And check back on our episodes 1 through 7 reviews, as well as our general review of Star Wars Visions if you want our more general spoiler thoughts on the show as a whole. And then stay tuned as always for videos 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And you can follow us on social media at Star Wars Lads on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So thank you for watching this review, and we'll see you for the 9th review about Akakiri coming soon.